Hi there. I'm your host, Amelia Rolopoli, founder of Pebble, a brand strategy and marketing research consultancy. Pebble Presents is where we talk about creativity, marketing, innovation, and all the ahas in between. I'm glad you're here. Welcome to Pebble Presents. Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Amelia Rolopoli here from Pebble Strategy. In today's episode, we're talking about the art and science of entertainment journalism. I'm so happy to be speaking today with journalist Stevie Wong. Stevie's reported for some of the biggest international entertainment channels, including Sky News, Star Movies Asia, Deadline, HBO Asia, just to name a few. His latest venture is the recently launched Asian AV Club, celebrating Asian creatives who work on film and TV behind the scenes and also in front of the camera. In today's episode, you'll hear us discuss Stevie's evolution from an assistant at a global record label to an internationally recognized award-winning entertainment journalist. We'll also talk about what journalism and qualitative research have in common, and we'll also have the chance to hear more about the inspiration for his latest venture, Asian AV Club. Let's get into it. Great. Well, thanks for joining me today, Stevie. I'm really happy you're here. And full disclosure for our viewers and listeners, you and I have known each other for a very, very long time.
You're one of my oldest friends from college. I mean, I feel like we met maybe on the first week of
we did.
University, and
we did.
We may have bonded almost immediately. So this is this is going to be a very easy conversation. I think people might listen and be like, okay, they're a little bit too insider at this point. Like, there's too many. Remember that time, Emmy? Remember? Oh, sorry. And I call you Emmy. I think I might have to refer to you as Amelia, which is awkward for me because.
I'm going to tell you a secret. Yeah. You're grandfathered in. I am Amelia. That's actually my name, but you can call me by everybody who knows me from my nickname from the old days can absolutely be grandfathered in. So whatever makes you happy.
Thank you.
Now, I was doing the math. I think we've known each other for more than half my life. That would make total sense.
So you're 40 years old right now, and so I met you when you were like 20. Yeah,
I'm only 22.
Yeah.
I've observed and admired your career as it's evolved and grown, of course, but we've never actually had the chance to sit down and really talk shop. And so that's why I'm really, really happy that we're chatting today. So I wanted to start, Stevie, if you could help give us an understanding of your background a bit. I'd like to actually have you talk about yourself and give a little bit of a short history about how you found yourself in your current role.
So I feel like if you look at what I've done in my, I'm going to air quote career here, the fact is I went to school for something completely different from what I ended up as. And it's been interesting because spoiler, I'm a journalist by nature, and I talk to people for a living. And a lot of the times that the people that I'm talking to, if you listen to like how they started and where they've ended up, it kind of turns into a little bit of like, this is not the path that they kind of set up themselves for. And so I went to university to study advertising and copywriting, to be a writer of sorts, to work in ads. And then what happened was, in the process of doing internships at ad agencies and doing all that kind of stuff during summertime, my first job when I left university was at this channel called MTV Asia. And at the time, they were looking for PAs who could write and also had an interest in music, which I offered. And so
that is exactly your profile.
Yes. And so I walked into this space just being a full-on music nerd, which I cultivated all through my life and still am a little bit of, and worked in this environment that maybe was two hands on deck, meaning like if you go in for this one job, when you walk into this space, especially MTV in Asia at the time, they were developing as a regional network. Everybody just did everything. So if you were hired to do one thing, by the first day, you realize very quickly that you're going to be doing a lot more. And so I was writing scripts, and at some point, like maybe in my first month, I was going on a shoot by myself, and so it just kind of, you're thrown into this lion's den of a situation. And because it was MTV Asia, stars came through all the time. It was just this crazy, like, nonstop experience of just trying really hard to keep your head above water and still like sitting in front of like idols that were like, right in front of you. And it was just such a really strange experience. And at the time, because you're young, you don't know any better. And so you're just going ahead with it. The adrenaline flows, and you might make mistakes, and you might get a bit of a conversation at the end of the day. But in general, that was kind of my kind of work breeding ground for a good couple of years. And then from that job, I ended up, by the time I left MTV, which then turned into Channel V, which is also a music network. This network broadcasted out to like 150 million people. I mean, this is a global music network. And the craziest thing was it was run by a bunch of monkeys like me. Like it was just so crazy that it was just all of us were kind of thrown in the same situation. We were just kind of running the show. And
it's kind of like it was the Brave New World, because I kind of consider you part of the second wave of entertainment journalists and correspondents.
Yeah, it was crazy. And of course, now in retrospect, it's like, oh, we did all this stuff. But at the time, every day was another experience that you just had to overcome. And of course, they would bring people who were our bosses in. And it was a real division of like, oh gosh, the bosses are in town. We have to like pretend that we know what we're doing. Or there was a real division of like, oh, they're older and we're the younger crowd. And so there's a real kind of like age gap going on too. Like, okay, boomer. And so it just cracked me up.
So this was when you had moved back from the States to Hong Kong, right?
Yes. So my first job was to go back, and that was I landed, and within 2 months I was working at the time MTV, and I don't know. I think that experience taught me so much about interacting with people. It turns out I have pretty good EQ and just the kind of ability to flow into a situation. And if you've learned enough from the previous gig, then you're able to just like step into the next one with a little bit more confidence and a little bit more direction. I mean, I have never told this, but I've been on shoots where we've been thrown into so let me backtrack a little bit. So I became the specialist in all things like esoteric. So alternative music was my jam. Dance music was my jam. I was also the chart boy. So anything with the Billboard musics was like any countdown. I was like the person to go to. So I became a specialist also in that aspect. So I was always looking at charts from all over the world, what was playing really well, trying to source those music videos, and just being really like hands-on and trying to make whatever specialty show that I was working on the best that I could make it. And a lot of my colleagues were not in that situation. They were just flat out producers. They were given the show. They had to write scripts. They shot with their talent and stuff. But I was behind the scenes always doing all this extra stuff, to the point where like for Billboard, I was flown to LA to be part of the Billboard Music Awards and like worked behind the scenes, brought a team of people. And so a lot of that I didn't know what I was doing. Nobody taught me how to do this. I just did it, right? And I remember you, Emmy, coming to even visit me in LA, and you came to my hotel room, and I was like playing you some music, and you just so happened you were there for work, and I was there for this Billboard thing. And I was like in the middle of this like bonkers experience, but at the same time, I didn't know any better,
I totally forgot about that.
It was crazy. I remember you coming to the hotel room and I was playing you Jamiroquai. Remember that? It was like,
Jamiroquai.
Right. And I was like, this is my favorite song. And it had nothing to do with the awards itself, but I was like still like focused on music. And so those kind of 5-6 years of developing those skills made me think that I really wanted to get into music. I was like obsessed with it. I was surrounded myself with all this. So I moved back to New York in hopes to get a career in the music industry. And I ended up working at a record label, a big one, for a couple of years. And it turns out that I was fine at it. I was like somebody's assistant, but it didn't tap into my creativity at all. And even though it allowed me to get all this access to the music that I loved, and it really allowed me to go see as many the concerts that I wanted to, it was amazing. But at the same time, I realized that I wasn't like learning anything, and I wasn't, it wasn't tapping into like my strengths. And so, funnily enough, my last employer, this huge boss, he pulled me into his office on my last day of work, and he goes, well, I have to let you go. And I was like, oh no, what did I do wrong? And he goes, well, I don't think you're suited to be on this side of the table, meaning that you're not an executive. You're not a marketing person. You're not this person that like is dealing with numbers and stuff like that. And in fact, I can see that the fact that you realize that music is a business kind of makes you a little bit sad. He's like, I think you need to go back to the creative side of stuff and be really kind of enthusiastic about the thing that you're into. And I was like,
was he right? I mean, at the time,
well,
were
at the
you
time
able to
I was
see
like,
he was right, or at the
Yeah.
time were you like, what the hell, man?
yeah, well, I needed the paycheck, right? And so I was like, well, this is a wrong decision, but I understood because I messed up. I mean, I was not a very good assistant to this guy, and full disclosure, and plus he dealt with music like a business. So his thing was, well, artist A did really well with this song, so therefore our artist needs to write or have a song that sounds exactly like artist A, and therefore we'll have a hit because it sounds like. And that to me was not music, or at least the stuff that I was into. I liked creativity. I liked people who are original and stuff. And so it was kind of disheartening. And every time I dealt with like these songwriters and stuff, and you can hear them, they're just like, oh, well, we wrote it like this person. And then, there's the side of me that's really curious to be like, do you really want to write this song? Like, is okay, but I get it. It's a paycheck, and so I, funnily enough, developed really strong relationships with these songwriters. It was hilarious. I was like doing weird interviews in a weird way, like kind of priming myself for this career that happened after I left the record label, which was still a good 4 years of my life. It was a pretty long thing, and I seriously thought that I would have been able to create something, but I just was in the wrong division. I just wasn't like working with the right people, and so it just didn't fall the way that I needed it to.
Whenever I am asked by a younger friend or contact about sort of how my own career and professional life developed, the advice I give, I don't know if it's advice, but I tell them what worked for me. And I'm really lucky because when we were at college together, I actually didn't know professionally what I wanted to do. And what's really ironic is you were studying advertising, but I went into advertising.
Right.
And the main principle I was able to apply and that I had the privilege of applying is doing things that I loved and things that I found creatively fulfilling. And then I was able to somehow hustle and make money with it, like find a job, find a way to get paid for that. And in that way, even though you and I are in really different professions, I think we both have that in common, where we have actually had the privilege to do work that we actually enjoy. Like I tell people, like, I don't have hobbies except for karaoke, of course. Yeah. I don't have hobbies because I actually I'm filled with what I do professionally because I find it quite fun. Well, and not everybody can say that.
And it's true. It's like you and I are very lucky in the sense that like somehow the universe understood us a little bit earlier than we understood ourselves, and somehow gifted us with potential kind of opportunities, which then when it showed up, we were like, oh, like that experience. And I feel like, at least for me, my kind of career choices have always been just like, oh, this is interesting, let me just say yes to it. And so it was so strange. Almost the second that I walked out the door with my box of goodies from this record label, I got a call from my channel that I used to work with back in Asia, the Star TV channel. And they're like, hey, we need somebody to fill in to do an interview with Natalie Portman for this movie that she's working on. And you're in New York. Can you just go in and talk to her at a junket, which is basically a press event where they invite journalists from all over the world to basically line up one after another, and then they just like do those interviews. And so I went to this thing and then sent out the tapes. Back in the day, we used to get these huge tapes and we had to send back.
I remember that.
Oh my gosh.
And, my first job in advertising was in broadcast traffic.
Yeah.
And I was the one who was packing and shipping tapes.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Tapes. Big.
On FedEx. I had a big FedEx sheet.
Yeah, me too. And so I had to put tapes in a box, and then you pack it up, and then you ship it over, and hopefully in 4 or 5 days.
Analog.
Yeah, all those days. And so that job ended, and then I went back to the person that hired me. I'm like, hey, do you have somebody based in the United States to do this for you? And they're like, no, we don't. And I'm like, would you be open to having me be that person for you? So I just kind of blurted it out, and they're like, yeah, let's do this. And so that started this job where I became their person, and that led to me becoming their official person because they developed a television show, and then they would be like, and now we've got our U.S.-based person, Stevie, and he's going to talk to so-and-so, and that turned into a decade-long career. It was kind of this insane journey where I just slowly but surely just became the specialist for representing Asia at all of these Hollywood events. And I mean, again, it was me just saying like, hey, would you be interested? And, and they were just open. I lucked into that job.
at the time you were doing this, were you the only Asian correspondent at these junkets?
No, I mean, there were probably other people that they sent in. A lot of them were not based there. Countries that had probably like more budget to have people based in the United States were also like news agencies and stuff. And so a lot of them were doing hard news. And then on the side, they would like every now and then get a job to do. So I was probably the only one that was just focused on the film side of things. And to be very honest, it was a great gig because I had to watch the movie and then go home, write some questions, sit in a seat, and then fulfill those questions and then pack them up and then send them back. That was all I had to do for 10 years.
That's like a cushy job.
It was a great, cushy job. But what had happened was, and I, again, did not know what I was being trained for, but I learned very quickly the art of walking into a space of total strangers to suss out the room, to see what energy was happening, because you can also walk into a space, who knows what happened, the person before you may have like pissed off the artist, may have done something that like, and so when you walk into that room, if you sense something is off, you go into like, I call it like my minstrel puppetry show, you know, where I'm just like, hey, everybody, and you just kind of like have to work this room of strangers to kind of like root for you. So even in your kind of 6 or 7, 8 minutes, now they're like 4 minutes, which is insane, talk with these celebs who you're number 35 on their list. They're bored. They're totally bored. And so you have to do multiple things. You have to work this room, and not just the room, you have to work the tech people who have been standing behind the cameras. So after a while, I learned very quickly to always address the camera people first, to always talk to the personal publicist next, to kind of like, and then once they react to me, then the star knows, oh, this guy's friendly with everybody, then I should be friendly. So it's just this really strange like trick that you're playing with an artist. And then when you sit down, at least for me, I have no bad intentions. I just want to know how you made this film. That's all I want to do. You know, I'm not going to ask you about your personal life. I'm not going to like dig into anything. I'm not going to aha you. This is pre-games. If you watch a lot of these YouTube videos now with the interviews, they're all playing stupid games now. And so this is before all of that. I would just go in and ask questions about the movie and the experience that was on hand. And so it was a nice thing because I came in soft, friendly, but I asked questions about film. So I was like this bizarre little mix of like happy journalist, you know, and that was something that I think a lot of other people were not doing. A lot of them were like, this is my chance to be famous also. This is my chance to have FaceTime with like the big star and use this as my reel. I didn't care about any of those things. In fact, it's like the less I knew that the camera's on me, the better I was. And so that was a 10-year experience in learning how to run a room, run it. So basically, you're almost directing that space very quickly within like a 7-minute period. That was the breeding ground. Whatever I did, you can talk about my interviews, who I talked to, my favorite. I can't tell you. But what I did learn was how to walk into a space and like make sure that everybody is on my side by the time I leave this room. So that was just my big skill.
And that's, I want to dig deeper into that, because I think one of the interesting things I wanted to chat with you about, maybe unpack together, is, so I'm a qualitative research practitioner, and I feel like I have the sense that there must be some complementary skills between the way you do your work and gather your insights or interview and the way a qualitative researcher does. One thing you mentioned was having this high EQ and being able to walk into a space and quickly assess what has to happen to make everybody comfortable.
Yeah.
And I think that's something we do too. But what's amazing to me is you have to do this on a much more shortened scale.
Yes.
If we walk into a focus group, or if I'm going to be doing, in-home ethnographic research, I have a much longer time to build that rapport. But I will tell you something that I think is very similar to what I'm listening to you say. And what I know is the first few minutes of an interaction will determine whether that conversation or that interview is going to be what we call psychodynamic or dependent. And psychodynamic, just to nerd out for you for a second, in qualitative research, a psychodynamic model is one in which all the participants in the conversation contribute to the success and the movement of the conversation. A dependent model is where the researcher or interviewer is the boss and the teacher, and you can't speak until they call on you, et cetera. That's a dependent model.
Right.
But what we try to aim for is a psychodynamic. And in a way, that's kind of what you're doing, it sounds like, but you have to do it and to get what you need in 7 minutes.
But I mean, in the case of the things that I do, there's no space for a dependent model, because like you have to have interaction with the person you're talking to. You almost hope that you get them comfortable enough that they're going to give you anecdotes that like they're not giving somebody else. So there's a play here. I don't go out of my way to make it look so obvious, but it happens, and a lot of times it just is because I'm comfortable in my space now. And so when I'm comfortable, then they're comfortable, and then they feel like there's a lot of, then it's almost like two friends talking, even though we just met.
That's so important, because I suspect that also creates a sense of pleasure and enjoyment for your interviewee as well.
Well, it's also safe, because if you walk in with some energy that this person doesn't understand, they can sense it too. Again, these are, actors or directors, or all these people are extremely sensitive people. And so they can suss things out pretty quickly. So if you walk in with strange energy, I'd put my walls up. Part of the whole lesson of these past, my career basically, is not only do I know how to work the room, I have to work on myself, right? And so that is something that is a continual experience, like a lesson on like what works, what doesn't work. And sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes the thing happens and you walk away going like, well, that sucked. Like that was not great. And you make do, and then you hope that the next one will be better. These days, when I walk away from a good interview, I'm so happy that I'm able to accomplish something like that. And I guess you feel the same way. Like if you have a very successful day where you're getting all the information that you need to in the best possible way, and maybe even be surprised by some of the things that come out of these sessions, I think that's a really wonderful success.
It's a wonderful feeling.
Yeah.
But I sometimes, when I scratch the surface of that, though, I do have a little bit of an internal struggle, because I, like you, I find tremendous satisfaction and joy in having really connected with somebody, a stranger, essentially, right? And it reminds me of our shared humanity, and that, somebody told me once that the greatest gift you can give somebody is that they felt listened to.
Yeah.
And at the core of what I do, that is my job. But the other side of that coin, which I always have to be cognizant of, is because I work in commercial market research, I'm doing that toward the end of helping a business, right?
Right.
So I do sort of have to balance that. And I have in my career been in situations where, I've had to have very highly sensitive conversations with participants where later in retrospect, I thought, wow, did I create an environment where that person felt totally safe? Was I protecting that person in that conversation? And I still struggle with that sometimes. And I think it's an ongoing sort of journey and learning experience as a responsible researcher to do that. But I agree with you. There's nothing like that wonderful feeling that I've given something to this other person in the form of having a really helpful conversation.
Well, I want to ask you now, is have you ever had an experience where you've, run a very good room and people have opened themselves to the point of being completely vulnerable, where they, I don't know, are emotional, or they're kind of, extremely just completely low. And then how do you react when they start to do that? Do you put a kibosh to it and be like, hey, this is a work environment, stop crying? How do you, or do you let it just be and then deal with it later when you're on your way home and you're like, wow, that was a lot, and I'm just curious, how do you deal with it when things get...
That has happened because, I do research on a variety of topics and categories, and some of them can be around very sensitive topics, right? You have to be very careful, because I am not a psychologist
Right.
or a psychiatrist by training. So although I dabble in the psychological arts, I am not actually a licensed certified practitioner. So I don't go in those areas where I am not able to take them. But also, like you, I have sort of an agenda of things that we need to make sure we cover.
Right.
So in a way, that gives me a sandbox, and it gives all of us, whether I'm in a group, in a focus group, or in an interview, it all gives us permission to set the guardrails for our conversation. But I mean, I try not to cut people off, but I will gently guide people toward the direction we have to go. I don't know. I don't know how to describe it really well.
No, of course. I mean, I would say in my latter years as a journalist, again, I say I'm a journalist, but I feel like I'm much more of a conversationalist these days. I really try to have a conversation with my people, and sometimes in those cases, when they open up, I've had moments where people like may have shed a tear or like kind of, and on my end, there's two things going on here. One is like, yo, I got somebody to cry. Like, this is awesome. Like there's what that's the bad side of me, but it's like but I'm like, I got my Barbara Walters like moment. Like I was like all excited. But then the other side is like, wait, stop it.
I got my Barbara Walters moment.
Yeah, of course. It's like we all aspire for that moment, don't we? And so it was caught on camera. And but at the same time, it's like, well, I have empathy, and so I let it kind of play out. And then I catch myself a lot of times just like trying to be the equivalent. I mean, a lot of my stuff is on Zoom these days, but like the equivalent of just being able to hold somebody's hand and just be like, thank you. That was very raw. And I appreciate that you feel comfortable with me, but I need you to continue and answer my questions because that's what I'm hired to do, And so I've had to like kind of really take a breath and just realize that like, all right, this person needs to go through that emotion, and then now let's get back on track and like continue on with what we need to do. And it's a real sensitive thing because you can't be like, well, that was nice that you cried. Can we talk about, but you still have to figure out to guide them, and again, here we are, we've been talking a lot about EQ, and that's another aspect of like, I've learned how to do that. Maybe, I mean, in my earlier days, I did an interview with a music artist when I was very young, and he started crying, and it was because he was talking about his very rough life, and I didn't know what to do with that experience. I was completely like in shock that like I made him react this way. And then what was even weirder was that the people sitting next to him were not comforting him. So I was in the situation where I was like, I'm so sorry. Like I just didn't know what else to say. But it really made me flummoxed. And I didn't really I don't think my latter half of that interview like did well because I was like, oh no, I've made him cry. Like this is bad. But that's early. These days, besides my Barbara Walters sitch, I'm like, okay, this is an emotion that you need to go through, and let's work through it together, and then we have a job to do. Let's continue on to like kind of do this. So again, it's age, it's ability to understand yourself then, because then you can make sure that you can come in and do it in a way that's respectful and not advantageous, which I feel that some people might go for. But it takes a second to learn all these tricks, and they are like kind of emotional tricks, and that is something that I just, again, continue to learn how to navigate as I'm getting older, and kind of understanding like how people interact with each other. Because also things are different nowadays, like we talk about younger people and stuff, and so sometimes when you chat with maybe of a different generation, you have to deal with them in a different way than maybe you and I would talk to each other. I feel like there's a lot more directness that we can get away with without offending, whereas like if you're talking to somebody younger, there's all these other like things that I've had to learn in the process to like not be so blunt or not be so it's a stranger environment that again I have to learn in order for me to kind of succeed in this career.
So another thing that I wonder that we have a commonality in our industries or in our practices, if you will, is in research we are of course continually faced with the march forward of technology and AI and the ways in which that may or may not be displacing what we do as qualitative researchers. And at the end of the day, my business is humans. My business is human insight and always having a human-centric practice, right? And bringing the truth of people to businesses and to brands and to, creative people. But I also wonder, journalism and media has undergone like a seismic shift due to technology, and you've been front seat to that. And I'm just curious about what are the kinds of conversations and thoughts that this evolution and this shift has on you and how you do your work and your industry?
Well, To be very honest, it's been kind of eroding the past 5 years. The quality of journalism has changed in a way that a lot of it's now leaning towards clickbait, or click on an article and they're just rehashing somebody else's article. And so that to them is a journalist piece. Yeah, but to me, that's just rehashing. So the respect for people who used to kind of go in, do the research, write those stories and pieces, like they're getting fewer and far between. They still exist, which thank goodness that there's still a world where that happens. But a lot of it now is leaning towards online presence, meaning do you have followers on Instagram or TikTok, and can you create this kind of narrative, journalistic narrative on those kind of shorter mediums? And remember, TikToks are short, and so they don't need to know too much stuff. I mean, the good news is that things like podcasts have allowed for longer formats. And so I think people with those kind of backgrounds have been able to excel in that space, but it's so crowded now. Like, how am I going to find those journalists that I trust and spend, an hour of my time listening to them when I don't have that hour? Or maybe I do, but I maybe have other things I need to do. And so it's so saturated. It's just harder and harder to become a journalist these days. News companies, they're just firing everybody. And so moving forward, that means, one job, the applicants are highly credible and extremely talented people who are all going for that one gig, and probably being paid much less than they would during the heyday of like what they would pay journalists. And so I'm looking at this tunnel and I almost see like a bit of an end to it, and I don't know how things are going to play out. Plus, AI is changing the game. Some of these agencies, they'll be like, well, we'll just have somebody write some piece, or the machine write it. Somebody can edit and make it cleaner and stuff, and then publish. And it's just much faster, and you don't need to like do that much work anymore. And
it's more real time. I feel like I remember when Taylor Swift launched her most recent album, that there was a bit of and there were some, I think there were some, you'll know this better than I will, Stevie, but there were some reviews that were sort of criticizing it heavily.
Yeah.
And I guess some Swifties or somebody called attention to the fact that these reviews of the album came out like in a shorter time span than it takes to play the album.
Right.
Which revealed that, in fact, they were pre-written articles.
Yeah.
Already planning to pan the album.
Yeah. And again, clickbait, right? And so like, I'm going to click on this. What do you mean it's about? I'm going to listen to it. And so,
but it's the pressure to put out content immediately.
Yeah. This is the way the industry works right now. And there's just no way to fix it. I just hope now, those of us who realize that this, like maybe working for one outlet, I mean, the life of a freelancer, which is what I am, it's just getting harder and harder. I used to have multiple clients and stuff, and now it's a handful. And at that, they only give me a job like once or twice a month, if that, and so like you, where you had to pivot early on in your career, I'm in this space where I'm now pivoting a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'm doing other things, still in the space of entertainment, but maybe doing something behind the scenes. I recently was working on a film festival, doing some work for them, and it has nothing to do with my journalism skills. It just allowed me to help out, maybe in a bit of event planning, and kind of also doing some translating and also moderating and stuff, which is stuff that I could do in the past, but I just never really pursued it.
I definitely see that as a really natural outgrowth of your skill set and your areas of passion as well.
Well, it's been really cute because I go into these places again, and a lot of people that work in film festivals, and I hope they're not listening to this right now, but it's just like they're quite awkward, because their whole job is to sit in a room, watch 1,000 movies, write reports about it, and then make a decision if this is the right movie for their film festival, right? And so their social skills is interesting. So when it comes to the festival itself, and they need somebody to be more extroverted and able to like social, I've been asked, especially with this film festival, a couple of times to like, hey, can you come in for dinner with the filmmaker? And I'm like, why? And they're like, we have nothing to say to him. And I'm like,
I love that.
and I'm like,
extroverts unite.
Right. And I'm just like, all right. And then so I get off my sofa, and then I kind of, walk over to like the restaurant place, and I have these charming charming meals. It's free food. I'll say yes to anything. And then I have these meals with these filmmakers, and they're like, who are you? First of all, like, we've never seen you until this moment. And wow, this charm offense is amazing. And then so basically I just walk this person, I have the meal, I walk them to their premiere. I'm hanging around, making sure that they're all happy and stuff. And then when the thing's over, I disappear and go back to my little cocoon of a life that I lead, in general. And so it's just a really funny.
I love this. I love that. I think that's great. I think
I need more
that
of this,
really
yeah.
hones in on your skill set.
Like temporary energy bill. It's like, I'm hype man.
Foodie, film enthusiast. So in prepping for this interview, I kind of went down a little bit of a rabbit hole, and I watched a lot of your historical interviews online with VIP Access.
Yeah, that was the Star Movie show that I was telling you that I was.
The Star Movie show, also on Backstage for Sky News UK. And I love that. That was great. But something, Stevie, that I noticed, I think what makes you an effective correspondent with these people who have been sitting in a room doing interviews for hours and probably answering the same questions is you seem to come in as somebody who's a genuine fanboy enthusiast. Like I can tell the energy when you're interviewing is that you have a genuine and deep enjoyment and pleasure of the film industry, and in many cases the film that you watched. But you also, and so that kind of comes across as quite eager to meet the guests, and who doesn't like that, right? But then, like, as you were getting into these interviews, you're holding your own. Like, you got a deep base of historical knowledge about films and filmmaking, and not just US centric films, like international. Your knowledge base and familiarity with international film historically is kind of amazing. And I would watch a few interviews, and I won't name them, but where I'm like, okay, Stevie like called someone out, or like he like kind of got control of the interview again, because you're like, well, no, this references that, and how do you think that connects to this film? Or I found that really impressive, that you come in not only as a genuine fan and enthusiast, but as an aficionado of the industry.
So listen, as a young age, I was left to my own devices. I watched a lot of movies. I watched a lot of television. I read a lot of books. I was thoroughly enamored of these worlds that I was allowed to go into, and really opened my eyes to, I don't know, just adventures through other people's visions and stuff. And then what happened was maybe about, I'm aging myself, but 20 years ago, I went to Cannes Film Festival for the first time in my life. And even that thing was a very strange reason why I went. I was having tea with a person whose film was going to Cannes it was her first time. And I just finished working for Star. My job had ended. And I said, how would you feel if I used my own camera and I followed you for 3 days and kind of like basically went around with you and shot this behind the scenes experience of your life. So like as a documentarian, I don't know what this means, but I just would love to go. And she goes, yeah, sure. So on my own dime, I just went to Cannes and shot this thing. And it was, and then I made it into a 30-minute piece, which then sold to a couple of countries. And it was just really interesting because I made a little doc, like behind the scenes doc. But while I was there, I started to go to all these panels because they were available to me. And I realized very quickly that like, oh, this world is not just the red carpet and the big directors doing their big movies and stuff. It's a business. And not only is it a business, it's a business made up of all levels. So you've got somebody trying to hawk their Dolph Lundgren, movie, starring, all of these like actors who had a moment back in the 80s and stuff. And they were selling these films. Somebody out there is going to pay money to make this movie and show it in their, maybe straight to video, whatever kind of situation. And so you have all this level from like super high end to like super whatever end you want to call it. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. And it kind of, what's the word? It kind of made everything equal. There is nothing like better than the other. It was just because, making movies in particular, they're an extremely hard endeavor to do. And so it takes 5 to 6 years for you to finally see what you see in the screen. Now, whether you like it or not, it's a journey that everybody that said yes to this has to go on. Going to Cannes was a real understanding that this is the reality of film. And as a person who's a journalist, you need to respect that. Whether you like the movie or not, it is what it is, right? And so that allowed me to do my interviews in a way that, like, listen, I might not like your movie. I might hate it. I might think it's like super caca, but I understand that you spent 6 years on this project. And I understand that, like, maybe if I didn't like the movie in general, but the costumes were amazing, then let's focus on the costumes. And so there was always a nice thing about a project, whether you like the film itself, I could always start honing in on the other. And once I kind of opened up that level of appreciation, that then allowed me to then approach interviews in a not like, I am a fanboy and I like what you do, but I understand how it took for you to get there. So therefore, let's work together to celebrate the bigger story here. And so that changed the way I interviewed. It really did. I learned on the spot, and then I kind of took that with me to then move towards how I interact with.
That must have really opened up your maturity level.
Yeah, totally.
About the industry and a level of sophistication that maybe you didn't yet have the opportunity to develop yet.
And I have to tell you, a lot of my peers don't think like that. They're still like, I don't know. It's just they don't want to know the other side of it,
Yeah.
And so that's a shame for them. But that then allows me to be more. It gives me credit to be able to get those interviews then, and I feel like I think that helps when people read my stuff these days. They know that I'm coming from a place that I'm not trying to take anybody down. Again, your movie might not be the best, but I'm sure I can find something really cool about it. And I'd like to talk to you about that because filmmaking is hard. Making anything is hard. And so I want to celebrate like the journey to get there.
I'd really like to, Stevie, talk to you about your latest undertaking, your latest venture called Asian AV Club. Tell me more about what prompted you to launch this publication.
During the pandemic, I actually moved back home to Hong Kong for a period of time. And during that period of time, also a certain movie called Everything Everywhere All at Once did the rounds. Wonderfully won the Oscar. Michelle Yeoh got an Oscar. Ke Huy Quan got the Oscar. And it was just a really celebratory experience to watch people that looked like me do really great work. And what I noticed is, I was like, okay, well, yes, there's a lot of really interesting coverage. Everybody's celebrating all this stuff, but I really wanted to talk. I wanted to see more of the people working behind the scenes that, again, put everything together. It was a seed that was planted, and I was like, well, how am I going to celebrate this? What does this even look like? And so I created on my own with no backing whatsoever, and it's a personal endeavor, of a site called the Asian AV Club, which celebrates people that work behind the scenes on films and television shows that look like me or are in the same region as where I grew up and stuff. And so it's all AAPI, it's people like that grew up, it's South Asians, it's East Asian. And so there's a lot of creative people out there who are making things happen. And I just wanted a space to celebrate them. But not only to celebrate, but to kind of understand their stories, because I think for a lot of Asians who kind of walk into the entertainment space, it's just not a popular thing that families want them to get into. And so
you mentioned The Talk. Some of your interviews reference
always about The Talk.
The Talk.
Yeah. The Talk is such an important thing because even to this day, my mother doesn't understand what I do, and it cracks me up. I've done this for 30 years and she goes, well, he talks to celebrities. And then you can just see it's just period. And there's no extra. She may have seen an interview of mine in the past, but she's definitely she's not my number one fan, which is, it's fine. Moms are great. And so there's always a really interesting bit. I love hearing The Talk because that sets up a lot of how these people move forward. If it's a family that supports them, then how did that talk kind of propel them into being who they are today? If the family didn't support them, same question. How did that propel you to being it's a really nice way to also connect with these people, because that's something we all have in common, especially as Asians,
And it's this like real common, not language per se, but it's a common sort of cultural vessel that you all walk through,
Yes.
that you all have to journey through
Yes.
in this, like that's the sense I get from reading your articles.
well, we're in it together, right? And so that has always been the whole thing about this. I'm calling it Asian AV Club. Literally, we are this club. I picture us kind of being in the basement and being super nerds together. It just so happens these other nerds are like making amazing movies and like stuff. But I think eventually, if I can create a community of people who are just as interested or just as curious, this could be a really nice space for even future creatives that feel like they're the only person in their life that like is interested in it, and they go to this space and they're like, oh, wait a minute, this person is an art director, and I've always been curious about that. I don't even know what that is, and just I want to give it an opportunity to kind of like showcase all the opportunities. It's not just a star in front of the camera. It's not just a director. There's a whole world of people underneath in those credits that do amazing things, and if I can tap into those conversations with them, big or small, I think it'd be really beneficial. And it has been beneficial for me, because we've been talking about like the largest of like making a film and how many people like get involved. I'm learning. So in a strange way, I'm also kind of educating myself through the site and really kind of understanding like how films are made even more, which then allows me to be even better when I talk to the next person about a film. So all of this is just a continual like research project that hopefully can grow into something fascinating.
I think that's such a great insight, because we do every conversation, every interaction we have with other people, we learn from that, we take it forward. We either consciously or unconsciously, it molds us a little bit internally. And so one of the things I really appreciate about reading Asian AV Club is I can tell through your interviews that you really appreciate the practitioner's specialization. And so I always feel a little bit smarter after having read it, but I can definitely see why that must be such a fun thing to kind of allow someone to talk about what they're passionate about.
And you can tell, like, when you get into it, they're just psyched to be able to talk about their craft and like how they got into it in the first place. And you got to remember, again, most people only talk to the top 5 people on the credits list, right? And so when I'm kind of going even further down, it's exciting for them because they don't really get the opportunity to do it as much. They're just a skilled artisan inside. Without them, maybe it wouldn't look the way it does like on screen. And so I'm a big fan. Now, what I have done recently is like I started to start doing some interviews with people in front of the camera, because I just feel like it's been such a strange thing where people are like, oh, what about the star of this film? I'm like, no, I don't want stars. I only want director and producer and and then I was like, why am I limiting myself?
No, you shouldn't. I mean, if they want to talk, if the people in front of the camera want to talk to you, I say, hey, do it.
It took me like a couple months to realize this, but I finally learned my lesson, and so I started to incorporate people in front of the cameras, but with the same curiosity that I approach talking to people behind the cameras. So it is about their life and how they started, and we talk about the talk and like all those things that I would with these other people. I'm now giving it to the actors to be able to do the same thing, and I think it's quite refreshing. I'm getting some really nice anecdotes on their end too, because they're telling stories that maybe they haven't been able to talk during their own interviews with other press. And again, as the Asian kind of in the room, it allows for us to bond in a way that maybe others aren't being able to ask those questions or even are curious about, and so I kind of excel in the non sequitur of my questions, and you can just see that everybody like, oh, okay, yeah, of course, let's talk about that. It's kind of fun, kind of talking to me in that sense.
So I imagine you do your interviews live, because I can tell the conversational nature when I read your newsletter. Do you have plans or visions of expanding it beyond the written word and perhaps going into podcasts, or like how are the other ways that you're going to be kind of sharing and these interviews and experiences?
The answer is yes. The problem
but
the problem is time, right? And so it's just a lot more work to do a podcast as you're discovering. And also, if I want to do video stuff, which is kind of what I used to do in the past, that also changes because, especially with talent, they get a little bit precious about being on camera these days, unless it's like a recorded podcast, so then they can be relaxed and stuff. I got to play around with how to expand the Asian AV Club world, because I really appreciate those conversations, and it'd be really nice to be able to broadcast it also. Yeah. But for now, I'm going to keep it the written word, but there are plans at some point to do a version that's either audible or visual at this, or both at the same time.
Watch this space.
I know. Watch it.
What is the best way for folks to get on your list for Asian AV Club?
Yeah, just to so basically go to asianavclub.com and it'll go to this place and it'll say sign up, and you put in your email, and every time there's a new issue coming out, you will be able to get it right in your inbox. So please do that. That's kind of fun.
Please do that. It's a great newsletter. I love reading it. So
thank you.
I'm really happy. Is there anything else that you think maybe would be fun for us to talk about?
I was going to sing a song with you, but I guess that was not in the works.
We can totally sing a song.
Oh God, that's
Why not?
Hilarious. That is hilarious. So full disclosure, Emilia and I, we met the first week of school.
Choir nerds.
We're choir nerds. And so we trained to harmonize next to each other. Literally, her section was sitting next to my tenor section, and a lot of times when we got
my
into
alto section, I'm the alto.
Oh, sorry, that's the alto. And so we would the four, they would always pair us in the groups of fours or whatever, and then any chance I got, I would pull Emmy into my group. I'm like, let's do this. So yeah, harmonizing is a real jam. We can't harmonize on StreamYard because that's not possible.
We cannot. But will you sing a song for us?
No, no.
I would love that.
What are you talking about? That is Bonkertown.
No, it's not.
Yeah, I'm shy. But I do want to say that we, on occasion, get together for virtual karaoke. And it's a real joy to still have this relationship through song. And it's a lot of fun to continue this. In fact, we might be singing in person like very soon. So this is all, it's gonna happen. It's
gonna be icing on the cake. All right, we're gonna save our listeners from hearing us sing together, but I'm really excited to see you in person.
Trust me, we're great. We're so good.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
This was so fun, Stevie. Thank you for talking with us.
Oh, thank you for having me. Honestly,
thank you for talking with me.
It's an us. Pebble's an us. But I feel like when you asked me, I was like, what do I have to say? And here we are an hour into it, and I'm just like, oh, it turns out a lot. So thank you for drawing it out of me. Thank you.
Oh no, it's great. I love it. You've just listened to another episode of Pebble Presents. Please follow the show on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're interested in learning more about bespoke market research programs and strategy consulting from Pebble, please visit our website at pebblestrategy.com. If you enjoy the show, please follow, like, subscribe, and share. Thanks for listening. I'm Emilia Rolopoli. Until next time.